You know, it's actually crunch time right now. This is where we really get into the crux of who the actual decision makers were. And Barbara Creecy, who is currently now the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, has a lot to answer for starting today. We do know that her testimony will be taking place from about 10 o'clock this morning when the High Court gets underway. The hearings are virtual, but Barbara Creecy, who was then in about, I think in 2016, she was the MEC for Finance in Gauteng, and she had been part of a provincial budget committee with then Premier Mr. David Makhura. And they had budget meetings where they'd called the Department of Health to account for the fact that they had been overspending quite a bit. And you'll recall that about 12 mental health facilities had been flagged as having overspent more than 300 million rands in the 2012-2013 financial period. And they'd wanted then Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu to account for why the amount had almost doubled from the previous year, which had been almost 150 million. Why it had doubled and why the number of mental health facilities that they were paying for had not increased, yet the money had increased almost double over the space of that time. And we do know that in her testimony earlier this month that Qedani Mahlangu had said that she'd received quite a bit of pressure by then Premier David Makhura, as well as Barbara Creecy, who had then been the MEC for Finance, to make sure that they cut down costs, as she put it. And she said that they'd initially gone with the first plan, a plan where they were cutting down costs and they were moving their budget around. And she said initially at that plan, they were told it was simply not good enough. And it was only when they went back to the provincial budget committee saying that they would cancel their contract with Life Esidimeni, that's when they had then approved it. And we do know that in 2018, when Barbara Creecy had initially testified at the Esidimeni Inquest that had been chaired by a former Deputy Chief Justice Gauteng Finance in 2018, she'd said that everything that Qedani Mahlangu had said had to be taken with a grain of salt, because she said that at the time when she was MEC at the Provincial Budget Committee, they'd actually had the funds, and Qedani Mahlangu had never come to the committee and said that they wanted to keep their relationship with Life Esidimeni on track because they had more than 3,000 patients that needed the critical care and the specialized care that was being provided by Life Esidimeni. She said that money was there and that Qedani Mahlangu and her team of high-level officials had never come to the provincial budget committee and made an active case to lobby for them to keep their contract with Life Esidimeni on track, Naledi.
Yeah, I think one of the big questions, considering just how long of a saga this has been, where the country has watched all the way since 2016. I mean, it's a very long time. And Nozintombi, I think a lot of people are wondering what happens after this process, because we have had the inquiry and now you've got this inquest at the court. What happens at the end of this? Do we know?
Yeah, you know, Naledi, so what's happening right now, just to put in perspective the two parallel process. So the initial inquest that was chaired by then Deputy Chief Justice Gauteng Finance had been an initial probe to find out who the critical parties or the role players in the saga had been. So after the Health Ombudsman had made their findings public in 2016 about the deaths that had come out from the Life Esidimeni saga and fingered specifically MEC of Health Qedani Mahlangu, as well as the CEO, the HOD, and a raft of different high-level officials in the health department, as well as several NGOs that had been complicit and participated. It then set the stage for there to be a punitive process unfolding. And what's happening right now, the virtual court hearing that's happening, this is the parallel process that's happening that is going to be punitive. So what the outcomes from this court process will be is that all the people and all the parties that are ultimately held responsible or found to be held responsible by the court of law will then face criminal charges. And then a third process will then unfold where a criminal case will then unfold, where those people who have been found liable for the deaths of those 144 people, the neglect of the 3,000 Life Esidimeni patients that were put in health facilities or in NGO facilities that were simply shoddy and did not have the correct level of care. They didn't have the correct infrastructure to take care of those mentally ill patients that needed that specialized care, would then have to answer a criminal case for why they did not make sure that they stuck to the Constitution, the laws of the Constitution, and ensure that they preserve the lives of these extremely vulnerable people. So it is an ongoing, unfolding case, but where we are right now, this is an important court case that will make sure that it holds those parties liable for there to be a criminal case that then unfolds. So it is critical at this point that all the people that were responsible are ultimately held liable before the courts.